The 100th is the third episode of the 5th season of Friends, and of course this is the 100th episode. And I think we have quite a special topic for the 100th, but at the same time it's definitely not one of my favourite episodes. This is directed by Kevin Bright, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I talk about what happens in the episode and share some thoughts. Quite recently with my friends' discussions, I've been grouping my thoughts based on the parts of the narrative, but with this one I'm going to go through things chronologically, and it picks up pretty much where the previous episode left off. Phoebe is now at the hospital because she's having the babies, and Joey is trying to make a video of the occasion, and then he starts to have what Phoebe thinks are sympathy pains, and we'll find out more about those in a bit. Phoebe's doctor then comes in. He seems very professional, very nice, and then we quickly realise he is obsessed with Fonzie. And I think Fonzie comes up maybe 4 or 5 times in the episode, and Phoebe is not impressed with this. Meanwhile, Rachel has managed to get dates for her and Monica with 2 nurses, and Monica is obviously not exactly enthusiastic about this because she's spending time with Chandler, and Monica and Chandler end up discussing the fact that they're both just fooling around, even though I think it is very clear that neither of them believes they're just fooling around, but I don't think either of them wants to be the first one to admit that actually the relationship means more to them than that, and I think it's quite telling how they both responded to that situation. Phoebe then gets a new doctor, and she has decided that this doctor is too young and inexperienced to deliver her babies. I feel like, I don't know how it works in the States, but I'm pretty sure in the UK you can't just pick and choose your doctors. But nevertheless, this is what Phoebe is doing, and the classic Fonzie doctor ends up coming back. And meanwhile, Joey finds out that he has kidney stones. And every time I read the word kidney stones, I see the word kidney stones, I read it in the voice of Joey's doctor. He's played by Iqbal Theba, and I love the interaction where Joey is trying to get him to say it could be something else other than kidney stones, but it's not, it's kidney stones. And just for the last 2 decades or however long, I've heard the word kidney stones in that voice. And I think it was a nice way to kind of pad the episode out, because obviously we're spending the entire episode down at the hospital. It's all about Phoebe and the babies, and we have some really good scenes with Phoebe, and I'll talk more about those in a bit. But I think it was a nice way to include something else for us to focus on and occasionally break up the main narrative with. Obviously, don't like seeing Joey in pain, but it works well for the episode and might help raise awareness for kidney stones. We then have a sweet moment. Well, I say sweet, it is sweet, but it's also kind of awkward. A moment between Phoebe and Rachel where they're talking about the babies and what's going to happen. And then Phoebe tells Rachel she wants to keep one. And I have obviously no experience with surrogacy, but I could imagine that this is actually kind of a common feeling. If you've carried a baby for 9 months, or 3 babies in Phoebe's case, I can only imagine what it must feel like to know that at any moment you're going to give birth to them and then have to hand them over to their parents. And that must be difficult. And we get to see a bit of this with Phoebe. And she knew this was going to be the case. We had the test with the puppy. Her birth mother gave her the puppy many episodes ago now. And Phoebe knew that this would be difficult. But I guess nothing compares to the reality of the situation. And Rachel, before she goes to Frank to try and see if this is even an option, which I think is completely ludicrous, she then mentions to the Fonzie doctor that she liked Mork. And for a long time, that meant nothing to me. And then about 10 years ago, maybe, I watched Mork and Mindy and fell in love with it. And now the Mork reference definitely puts a smile on my face. And then we have the birth of the babies. We start with Frank Jr., and then Leslie, and then we have the fabulous moment, and I think this is one of my favourite Friends moments ever, even though it's not one of my favourite episodes, where the 3rd baby is born, and Frank comes rushing out and announces Chandler's a girl, which I absolutely loved. Alice arrives just after the 3rd baby is born, and Joey has just passed his kidney stones. I like that Ross was with Joey as well, as it gave Ross something to do. We had the moments with Rachel and Phoebe, we have Joey and Ross, and of course we have the story with Monica and Chandler. And Chandler then tries to define what goofing around means in an attempt to try and persuade Monica to, I guess, go exclusive, if you like. And I like the fact that it was Chandler who did this, because we know Chandler has a fear of commitment, yet he is the one making the move to prove to Monica, to show Monica that he wants to spend more time with her. And I think that that's so lovely and definitely the right decision. That's not to say it wouldn't have been great if Monica had made that move, but I really like the fact that it was Chandler who did that. We then have what is possibly one of the most emotional moments in Friends, and Phoebe is having a moment alone with the babies. And she's talking to them, and she's saying how she'll be happy to be their favourite aunt, and then she says, well, if you're going to cry, and then she starts crying and gets emotional, and it's beautiful and it's moving and it's very touching, and I think it's very, very well done. And we then have the final scene. Everybody's gathered around Phoebe, and Chandler asks what baby Chandler will now be called, since Chandler is a girl. And of course, Phoebe confirms that Chandler will still be called Chandler. And it's a nice way to end things. I kind of wish they'd just ended with Phoebe talking to the triplets. I think that might have been a more powerful ending, but I don't dislike the final scene. It's definitely not too bad. But I think it would have been okay to end with a more emotional moment. And obviously that final scene was there to end on a slightly lighter note. I can understand the purpose, but I do think ending with Phoebe and the triplets would have been rather moving. Either way, the 100th is maybe the only episode that isn't called The One With. Although I've just had a look, and according to Wikipedia, this episode is actually also known as The One With the Triplets. And that could make sense, because pretty much every other episode is the one with, the one where, the one when. I don't know if there is another Friends episode that doesn't start like that. I'm going to have a look. But either way, the 100th, the one with the triplets, it's a great episode. We have some great moments. It isn't an all-time personal favourite, but at the same time, I can't really fault it. It's definitely not a bad episode.